Okay, so we're in episode 5 of Star Trek Picard. This spoiler warning, this episode whew, was a it was good. It was a gut punch. I'm just gonna say the first. This is my first disclaimer. If you're a parent and you have kids that are watching this with you, I'm just suggesting that you watch the first 10 minutes of this episode, because this first 10 minutes of this episode was wow. Like they went all out. And Jonathan Frakes actually directed this episode, which was actually pretty damn cool. So I'm just gonna go right into this episode because there's a lot in this episode. So it starts with you see a Federation, you see an officer in uniform, in a Starfleet uniform, on a cutting room table with these docs with these masks on, and they are, you could tell he was Borg. And then it's kind of like Seven of Nine, where she was assimilated, she was Borg, and then Voyager got a hold of her, and they pretty much kind of dismembered, took out all the Borg that they could, all the Borg implants that they could. So you literally see a drill go through this guy's eye, and then you see a socket, like this claw that literally goes in this eye and rips out his eye, and you just see this knife, this scalpel just slice it off. And you got this crazy doctor bitch going, "Where's your cortical note, buddy?" And it's like, and after she says that, she hears a phaser fire. And so she says, whoever the doctor was in the room with her, she doesn't hear anything. And then she gets hit with a phaser fire, and it reveals that it's Seven. Well, Seven quickly runs over to whoever it is, and she says, "Oh my God, Egypt! It's fucking Egypt on the cutting, Egypt!" Whoo! So that right there kind of set the tone of where it was going, because Seven was like, "Okay, I'm gonna get you out. You're gonna make it. You're gonna make it." And he was like, "Nope, it's too late," because you could tell he's dying. Egypt is dying. And he's like, "You gotta do it quick. You gotta do it quick." She's like, "No, I'll stay with you." And he's like, "No." He's like, "Do it now." So she grabs her phaser and she has it right on his gut. And she's just like, "I'm so sorry, my son." And shoots him, kills him, and holds him in his arm, holds Egypt in her arms, and just has a moment of tears. That was the saddest shit. Rest in peace, Egypt. Rest in peace, bro. That shit was wow. Didn't see that shit coming. So, and then you fast forward to 2 weeks ago. So that would have been taking place during episode 3 that we didn't see. It was behind the scenes on Freak Cloud at this bar where you see Dr. Bruce Maddox. He's out of his mind. He looks frantic. He's trying to find, this chick. I did not catch her name because the actress who plays this chick was beautiful, so I totally did not catch her name. So he says he wants to talk to her, and she's just like, "You know what, fuck it, kill him." And then she's like, "You know what, never mind." She's like, "Let's have some fun." So she sits down with him. She's like, "Have a drink." And so she's like, "What's going on?" He was like, "Well, my lab has been destroyed, and I made a deal with pretty much the devil, with these fucking Romulans, the Tasha Yar or whatever I might be mispronouncing it, but it's these motherfuckers, these conspirating motherfuckers." And so, he takes another sip, and she's like, "Well, that is a problem." And he begins to choke. So he's been poisoned. Falls down, glass breaks, and she's like, "The Tasha Yar is a pain in the ass to deal with." And so it cuts it to the intro, and then once it hits the intro ends, we're back on Rios's ship, but you're at the chateau in Picard's ready room, or whatever you want to call it. And Seven enters, and he asks if she's okay, and she says, "I'm all right, I'm all good." And She asks him the $1,000,000 question, what the hell are you, he offers her a drink, and he's like, can I offer you a drink, water, whatever, and she's like, bourbon, straight up, which is like, okay, Seven's drinking now, that's interesting, but whatever, spit through some shit. So she literally like takes a 2-finger bourbon and just boom, slams it back, and then she looks at Picard and is like, what the hell are you doing out here in the middle of the galaxy, trying to save the galaxy again? He's like, something like that. He's like, I'm looking for somebody who needs help. And she's like, well, why Free Cloud? He's like, I'm trying to find Bruce, this doctor, Bruce Maddox, to find this girl. And, she's like, well, Free Cloud, I hate Free Cloud because what she does now, she's a ranger. Like, literally a law enforcer of the galaxy, badass assassin, whatever. She's just a badass with two fucking, with some guns now. So Seven's kicking ass and taking names later. So they kind of have a word where Picard kind of tells her, I don't agree with what you're doing, but, I'm all about it, with what has happened, what has occurred with Starfleet and everything else. I get it. So with that said, she's like, I'll go with you to Free Cloud. You could drop me a Free Cloud, blah, blah, blah. Well, you see in the middle, it's probably nighttime because, it's fucking space, so you never know what time of day it is. But you see Agnes, played by Alison Pill, in her quarters watching a video of Bruce Maddox making homemade chocolate chip cookies. And you notice that they were together. They were an item. So there's a lot riding for her to get to him, which I will get to that later. So as they approach Free Cloud, they each get their own little holograms. Rios gets something about his ship, so he kind of knocks it off. Alison Pill gets something for like fighting, so she like knocks the hologram's head clean off and it disappears. Rafi gets something that has to do with gambling, so she's like pretty much just like yanks it, like throws it off the screen. And Elnor didn't get any, so he's kind of like, well, what the fuck? So they're trying to figure out how they can get Maddox, and they found out like Homegirl is like Fort Knox. Like, you can't get to her. You can't just go in there and kill her and get Maddox without going through like pretty much an army. So Seven proposes the idea, why don't you give her the one thing that she needs, which is like Borg. She likes Borg implants. She likes to take Borg for parts. She says, give her me. So they end up off Free Cloud. They gotta have they're all dressed up as some weird fucking shit. So Rios has to go in there and talk to this guy. He's the middleman. Has to make up a deal with this new species, which is fucking cool. Because he's got he could determine over 72 whatever, and he could smell you with his sense of smell, he could tell if you're lying. He could tell what you ate. He could pretty much tell who you had sex with and what species it was, which is, it's kind of funny. But they're pretty cool looking. They're like weird lizard looking motherfuckers, but whatever, it works. So he meets up with him, and as he's meeting with Rios, you have flashes of him in Picard's ready room getting the whole rundown of how he should walk, how he should talk, how he should act. And Rafi hits him with a serum of pheromones and all this shit, so when this lizard guy actually smells him, he can't smell that he's lying. So it gets to the point where he's like, I got something for you. He shows it, and he shows the hologram of Seven's, a whole body of, all the Borg implants. And he's like, well, he pulls out his phaser, and he's like, why do I get the feeling you're lying? So Rios looks at him, he's like, why don't you smell me? So he smells him, and he's like, you're telling the truth. All right, let's make the deal. So then you got Picard, Elnor, Seven. Rafi went down there for another reason. And Agnes is left up there on the ship just to get him out as a transporter. Just to transport him out if things get hairy. So Picard's literally standing there with Seven. He's got Elnor there, and this homegirl comes out, and he reveals that it's Seven. He's like, this is the best Borg, blah, blah, blah. She was assimilated when she was a kid, so she's got implants everywhere, so you have to cut everything limb from limb from limb. And it's making this lizard guy all just just like his mouth is like watering, like, oh my god, money, 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 money. So they take off the black hood, and you reveal it's Seven. Homegirl realizes it's Seven. Seven realizes it's Homegirl. They have a moment of like, hey, I remember you. She's like, oh, I remember you. And so Seven kind of like, she wiggles out of like her handcuffs and like chokes this bitch. And was like, literally, guns are on her. And she's like, put your guns down. And Homegirl's like, listen to her. Put your guns down. So the guns go down. And Picard's like, you've got some explaining to do. And she's like, well, I wasn't quite honest on why I went with you guys to Free Cloud. So she explains the whole E-Chip situation, where E-Chip was on a ship, and he was on a kind of a science mission, on an away mission, and received a distress call, and was ambushed by her and her crew. And she found out the only way she knew about Icha was because Seven confided in her and told her, because at this time this girl was playing Seven, trying to make it look like, oh yeah, we're here to help the Borg, we're here to like help relocate people, blah 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 blah, do the greater good. In reality, she played the player. And then 717 found out, she slipped out of her fingers, and it pissed Homegirl off because she was the one piece that she really wanted but didn't get. So now she's there, and Picard now knows what happened. He's like, this is revenge. He's like, this is not, I'm not about it, da 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 da. So Seven's trying to convince, Picard, hey, take the others, get out of here. And he's like, no. He's like, we're not leaving, and all this good shit. So Lizard Boy decides he's gonna he's got this really cool phaser thing that comes out of the cuff of his jacket, and Rios notices it and shoots him and kills him. So with that, they energize back into the ship, but you see Rafi in all this, in between all these scenes and stuff, she ends up going to she goes to this medical center, and she sees this gentleman, which turns out to be her son. Now, the beef with her son and her is Homegirl was high. Okay, let's just be honest. Rafi is an addict. She's an alcoholic. She's an addict, but she's a drug addict. She's admitted it. She sat with him. She's like high, and he's like, oh my God, what are you doing here? And he's like, did you track me down or did you hunt me down? And she's like, I did a little bit of tracking and I hunted you down. Ha ha ha. And he's like, well, what are you doing here? And she's like, I'm here. I'm clean. I'm here to get my life back together. I'm here to try to work things out with you and with your wife. He's married. And she's like, and to be in my grand. And he's like, it's your granddaughter. And she's like, oh my God, And he's like, you know what? He pretty much had a vent situation where he was like, well, what was the situation on Mars that made, you turn your back on the family, all this other things. He just lists a whole bunch of things that she wasn't there for, that she was high as hell, but she's running around with Picard and stuff. So he resents her. And so she ends up kind of picking up her stuff and putting her tail between her legs, and she ends up sneaking back aboard the ship, which, you later find out at the end of the episode that, they know she's on board, and they're just welcoming her back. Picard welcomes her back by, knocking on the door, and she's like, leave me alone. And he's like, welcome home, and then, leaves her alone. But Seven, once they get back on board, she strategically asked Picard, hey, can I borrow these 2 phasers? My armada's coming to come get me, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, yeah. And they have this heart-to-heart, which I thought was really good between the two of them, because it's one thing that you never saw, but you kind of wanted to see between two people who have been assimilated by the Borg and then got their life back. And Picard asked Seven, he's like, Seven asked Picard, she's like, after you were assimilated, and everything happened and you came back, she's like, did you ever regain your humanity? And he said, yes. And she said, did you regain all of it? And he said, no. Which made me go, fuck. This dude's been faking it and faking it and faking it till he, like, makes it, you know, to make it all seem like this whole thing with the Borg didn't really, you know, damage him as bad as it really did. But you really see it in both of them in that conversation that they are both still broken. They're both still broken on what happened to them. Picard was older. She was younger, so they're still trying to find that balance of, yes, this happened, yes, we can move on from it, but they're still just like, oh, man. So Seven beams back down to the bar, ends up taking revenge on Homegirl, just evaporates Homegirl. That was the shit. And then you see Seven walking out of the bar, guns blazing. They ended up getting Maddox. Excuse me. They ended up getting Maddox through all of this. He's back on Rios' ship, and him and Picard are having a heart-to-heart. He's like, did you meet Daj? And he's like, yes. He's like, Daj, you know, and he asked, he's like, is Daj dead? And he's like, yes. He's like, I had a feeling when they blew up my lab that she was dead. And Picard asked him, he's like, was there a sister? And he goes, yes, her name is Soji. And he's like, okay. And this guy, he's got like abdominal pain. He's fucking dying. And so Picard's like, do you know where she is? And he's like, on the artifact. And he's like, are you meaning to tell me she's on the alien artifact, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, yes. He's like, the reason why I did it, the reason why I made these two was he wanted one on Earth and one on the artifact, because he knew there was a government conspiracy, a fucking coup, with Starfleet involved and the fucking Romulan Federation, and he wanted both of these two girls to figure it out and to stop this shit. So that was like, yo, alright. So, you know, Allison Pill Agnes goes up to Picard and was like, hey, he needs to rest. You know, he's been through a lot. And he's like, okay. So he leaves, and Homegirl's having a moment with him going, he's like, I didn't think I'd see you again. She's like, I didn't think I'd see you again, and blah, 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 blah. And with a flick of, they have like a little conversation, and she's like, I really wish you knew what I knew. And he was like, what does that mean? And she fucking kills him. Hits some fucking buttons, and he starts choking to death, gasping for air. The EMH comes on, and he's like, stay true, and he's like, what's going on? And she's like, delete EMH. And as he's dying, she's literally looking at him with tears in her eyes going, if you only knew what I knew, if you only saw what I saw that I did not want to see, you would understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. And he dies, she sheds a tear, and then kind of like wipes her face. It kind of has that little kind of evil-ish moment. And it's like, oh shit. So that's pretty much how the episode ends. And the previews for next week is they're on the artifact and they got to get Homegirl. And some weird shit's going on. But all in all, to wrap this one up, this was a good episode. You could tell when you've got Trek members who are pure hardcore Trekkies directing, or you know, especially this episode when you had especially when you see Jonathan Frakes, his name's come up as a director, you knew it was going to be kind of a TNG-ish pace kind of episode, which it was, because it started off, you had pretty much like, you know, a TNG episode would start, there would be a problem. There would be like a huge major, like, oh shit, which we had 2. And then it's like, then you have the credits, and then you kind of have like a little subtle of, okay, all is well, let's come up with a game plan, and boom, 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 pace. By the time you're done, you're just like, whew, you gotta catch your breath, because that was how this one was paced. It was just, alright. It was one thing after another, and it just kept going until the end, and it was like, alright, we hit that TNG pace again. That was awesome, because the way it flowed, it felt like watching an old TNG episode. But we've got F-bombs, we've got more violence, we've got a lot more violence, and a lot more of things that we never thought we would probably see in Trek history, but we're seeing it now. But this episode for me was like on the scale of like, 10 being the best and 1 being like pure shit. It was a solid 8. It was a solid 8. And I feel like it's getting better and better. Cuz the next episode they're on the artifact, and and it's like I'm trying to kind of come up with my own predictions, like once they get, if they, I know they're probably going to get to her and they're going to get her off the artifact. But then I'm kind of wondering when they're going to go see, Riker and Troy, which I'm probably thinking that's not going to be this episode. It'll probably be the next episode after that, after they get her and they go, we need to lay low. And he probably is going to go, I know somebody. And that's probably when we'll see the relationship comeback of number 1 and Picard riding again, looking old. But like I said, this was like the first 10 minutes, man. If you're squeamish and you don't like the sea of blood and you don't like seeing, like in horror movies, body parts being dismembered, then you might want to like keep your eyes closed and just listen. And yeah, because it shocked the shit out of me. I wasn't prepared. I mean, I don't get squeamish, but that shit made me just go, oh my God. Wow, we went there, and they went there hard. They threw some punches and they threw some hits this episode, and it was awesome. So, with that said, I'm going to wrap this up. Like, share, subscribe. We're on the road to 100. We are almost there. We're almost to 100 subs. This is like epic. Like this, I want to make this a reality. Let's get to 100 subs. So, like, share, subscribe, please. All right. Talk to y'all in the next live stream or video.